right, let's talk about low back extensions. We're gonna do this on a glute ham today, but in your gym, you might find just a low back extension machine, which is angled more vertically than horizontally. So if you do use that machine, just know that it's slightly easier than doing it off of a glute ham machine. It doesn't matter which way you do it, just know that the resistance should be what it is required by your sets and reps. So if it says something like do 10 to 12 reps and you can do 10 to 12 on the glute ham and 25 on the low back extension, you're gonna have to add resistance. So the way you would add resistance on either of the machines, glute ham or the low back, would be to use a band or holding a plate to your chest. So let's kind of break down this exercise. This is a great exercise that's programmed with body weight in the beginner programs and then slightly with heavier weight as you go on into the advanced programs. And we want to think about this exercise, even though it's called a low back extension, we want to think about this exercise as a hip hinge exercise. That's really hitting the entire posterior chain because we only have so many exercises that we can perform before our central nervous system is doing too much. So we want to really try to get as much bang for our buck. Now, why I'm telling you that is we can get just as much activation in the low back by focusing on the hip hinge than just the low back without completely disregarding our calves, hamstrings, and glutes when I'm talking about the posterior chain. So at first, I'm going to show you the wrong way to do this. And then when I say wrong way, the wrong way for what we want, not the wrong way to do a back extension, but this is more of a bodybuilding style that's isolating your spinal erectors or your low back muscles. We want to do it, like I said, for the whole posterior chain, which will involve a straight back, bending at the hip, focused on the hip hinge, and driving back up with a straight back. So let's go over that now. Like I said, I'm going to show you the wrong way first, and then I'm going to break down the correct way. So this is the typical way that you would see people do low back extensions. Basically, they would be extending through their back. Now, we don't want to do it this way in the sense that we're rounding at the back and extending through the back. Now, there's nothing wrong with this. It's just that we want to target the entire posterior chain. So to do that, we want to focus on that low back, not rounding, but staying in a neutral spine, and that we're driving through our heels and then basically firing through the glutes into the low back to bring our body weight up. Now, we're going to have more power this way as well. So if you go beyond your the beginner programs, you're going to use a lot of body weight, but once you reach a certain point, you're going to have to add resistance, and this is a great way to really develop that posterior strength that you're looking for as a wrestler. So the first thing I'm going to do if I'm using the glute ham is make sure that I don't favor a side. You might see a foot kick out or angle outward versus staying straight. We want to make sure that our feet are almost you almost feels like you're pointing them inward because your feet do naturally want to stick out slightly. So we want to make sure that our feet are parallel and one side is not. If you see one side pointed out, that's typically showing that you have an imbalance or weakness on that side, which will be exposed in another exercise, which is a single leg low back extension. But let's just go over this one first. I'm going to get in position. I maintain neutral spine from my head to my shoulders and down. My legs are straight. From here, I'm maintaining this position. I'm bending all the way down at the hips. I'm firing through the heels and my glutes to come back up. I don't continue to pull up. I stop here, which is basically a straight line, and I go back down, fire up. Now, if I was to do this with band tension, I would pull that up to my chest, fire up into position. If I had a plate, I would just hug myself or hug that plate. So, like I said, you can do this with a glute ham, which was the way we're demonstrating it today, but feel free to do this on a low back extension if your gym doesn't have it. Great posterior chain exercise, and it's great for developing that early low back strength and posterior chain strength without too much technical difficulty.